Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. I'm out of the workshop again, and I'm here at the His Royal Highness the Prince Albert Collection Museum in Monaco. And I've been over here inspecting a car in the museum with their kind permission. But while just the way the stars align and one thing or another, I couldn't resist making a video of this while I was walking past it. It's here for just a few days only. It's been here as part of the Monaco Historic Grand Prix 2026. It's made a special appearance with Prince Albert actually partaking in driving the car round the circuit with the president, I think, of the Automobile Club of Monaco, if I'm not mistaken. This is an incredible piece of automotive art. There is simply no way to describe it as anything else. This is the ultimate Bugatti. It's the ultimate statement of the 1920s and 30s. I'm going to say that contentiously. It is just an outrageous car in every respect. This is the Bugatti Royale Type 41, and they only made 6 of them. It's an excruciatingly rare car. This particular car was Ettore Bugatti's car for himself. He made this as his demonstrator to demonstrate to royal families, dignitaries, senior leaders, your average country leader around the world, and his dream was to actually sell these, and he used this as the demonstrator, but this is not the original body. It's had, to my recollection and knowledge, at least 4 bodies put on it in its life, this car, different bodies. Again, it's a body on frame or body over chassis design, so you've got this huge steel chassis running the length of the car, which holds everything: suspension, brakes, steering, engine, gearbox, but also the whole body is placed on top of the chassis. That's why you could change them. You could unbolt the body, take one off, and make a new bonnet to align with the rest of the body. It was Jean Bugatti, Ettore's son, who designed a lot of Bugattis, actually, designed this body with this swooping curve here. It's called the Coupé Napoléon. They made 6 Royales in total. It was the biggest marketing flop in history. Nobody bought them because they were too dear, too big, and it was the timing couldn't have been worse. So they ended up keeping them all, basically, all 6 of them. It's got a straight 8, 12.8 litre engine. And this engine was in the typical Bugatti fashion, inline, aluminium, which is very unusual for the 1920s and 30s, actually. The engine was quite a reliable and robust unit. It developed 300 horsepower, 300 brake horsepower, which is 25 brake horsepower a litre, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to... This was actually one of the fastest cars of its time. It's not particularly known, but this car was very fast. So basically, most of this huge bonnet is actually consumed by engine, but it's essentially, because it's a straight line of 8 cylinders, it's long and thin, the engine. This was the sort of fashion, it was the zeitgeist at the time, it was the way things were done, was to actually have an inline engine, or at worst a V, like Cadillac had their V16s, to actually fit in a fairly narrow bonnet area here. But the problem was, when you developed an engine with 8 cylinders in a row, that meant 8 separate bearings on the crankshaft. And what used to happen was, because of the pulsations and the length of the crankshaft, it used to get deflections, as they're called, which means the crankshaft moved in service, particularly at higher RPM. It became a problem as engines got bigger, as cars got heavier. The straight 8 engines, days were numbered, really. I think the Rolls-Royce Phantom 4 in the 1950s was one of the last straight 8 engine cars, the B80 engine as it was called. And this was sort of the zenith of the straight 8 engine. It was the ultimate, possibly because it was a cul-de-sac, it's one of the ultimate iterations of the straight 8 engine. The fact that it can fit under this narrow bonnet, narrow hood area. And what happened over time, of course, the V8 engine came into prominence, and that was a 90-degree V8 engine for correct firing pulsations at 90-degree intervals. and that made it of necessity wider. So the front end had to grow. The perfect example is the Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. That had the V8 engine in it that Rolls-Royce introduced in 1959, but it was a very tight squeeze, so much so you had to get at the spark plugs through the inner wings. There were access panels either side on the Silver Cloud 2 and 3. It got to the stage where the coachwork was forced outwards, and that's when it started to become one piece with the front wings. Then we got the Silver Shadow as the Rolls-Royce example, which was a square, bluff front end by comparison. And they put a V on the top of the bonnet to make it look like a traditional coach-built car, but actually it wasn't. It had the 90-degree V8, it had a much wider engine aperture, and shorter for that matter, because the V8 is such a compact, it's more like a cube, and this is very long and thin. So again, this is an amazing thing about this car, is the fact that the engine was so huge, and I don't know what it's red lined at. I'll have a look in the dashboard and see, but it can't have been very much, because it just couldn't cope with the twisting actions, the torsional vibrations, the deflections I've talked about. But the beauty of straight eights is they sound absolutely gorgeous. Well, it doesn't even have a rev counter. I suspect the chauffeur knew only too well when the engine was starting to vibrate and flex the crankshaft. Heaven forbid it would flex actually, but certainly vibrate. The chauffeur would know all about it, and that would be the time to change to the next gear. You actually know when the rev limit is through the seat of your pants rather than an instrument on the dashboard. And driving something like this, we know it was fast, but the passengers don't want to be shake, rattled and rolled, thank you. They want to drive very demurely. So yeah, the straight eight did its job, but only at low revs. I suspect it was probably limited at something like 2,500, 3,000 RPM. But interesting, the chauffeur has got his telegraph here for the back. There's a blowpipe so you can talk to the chauffeur in the front, which again was in a lot of cars of this period, so you could instruct them to, I'm sorry, but the second order crankshaft vibrations are beginning to felt through the back seat. Can you please slow down a bit? Something like that. And in fact, the engine was so reliable, Ettore Bugatti was challenged to make rail cars. Rail cars were all the thing. Different countries were experimenting with them. Internal combustion engined rail cars. Single railway carriages, same at both ends, so they didn't need to turn around on a turntable. And Ettore Bugatti had a rail car set, which I think was 2 rail cars from memory, or 3, 2 or 3 carriages, so an extended version of a single one. And it was powered by either 1 or 2 of these engines. And they were used in service. They actually covered miles. But the Coupe Napoleon has just so many interesting features. This bodywork is called Coupe de Ville. In other words, it's a town car. It's cut for town use. So the chauffeur was out in the open, and the passengers were ensconced in this extremely luxurious rear compartment. And they had the special plaid, brocade, velvet upholstery, and the chauffeur had to slum it with slippery leather seats. That was the poor quality, something to cover the chauffeur's compartment was leather. The Coupe de Ville, this has 4 skylights in the roof. Why not? One of the other coach building techniques around this time was what's called a sedanka de ville, which means it's similar to this, but it actually has a removable sliding panel, very heavy, which there's a flap which latches up and then or down, and the removable sedanka panel comes over and marries with the top of the windscreen frame. And that is called a sedanka de ville. So you could have it either open in the chauffeur's compartment, or you could have it closed. Rolls-Royces had the Phantom 3s, a lot of cars had sedanka de ville bodywork on them. It was very expensive because of this extra complexity, but it was also heavy. It made them a heavy car. You had lots of bodywork and this big sliding panel which weighed a considerable amount because it had to be quite rigid on its own. And one of the other interesting things, many about this car, is the 24-inch wheels. So it's amazing how things have come full circle, no pun intended, because we now have 20 odd inch wheels on Range Rovers, Rolls-Royce Phantoms, etc. But this car pioneered the 24-inch wheel. The wheels are actually the brake discs, the brake drums rather. So it's cable-operated brakes, link-operated brakes as opposed to hydraulic. The wheel is actually a cast aluminium brake drum with a steel insert. Aluminium and steel have different coefficients of friction. So as the drums got hotter, they would expand and the steel band inside the drum would not be quite the interference fit it was. I mean, some fantastic engineering challenges. Ettore Bugatti, he must have been a ridiculous obsessive, really. We know that, but no car better exemplifies it than this. The other thing is, the wheel is actually, it's a turbine. These vents, these slats are angled to actually promote air being pushed. Because this is a drum brake, it's not a disc brake, it actually pushes the air onto the drum inside here to cool it. And this design Bugatti used, of course, in the Type 35, the Grand Prix cars, etc. And the other thing that belies this car's age is the fact that some of the fittings on it, the radiator is nickel plated or solid nickel. But then we have these headlights, these Marshall headlights, which are chrome plated. And decorative chrome only came in the late 1920s. There's two types of chrome. There's hard chrome for pistons on diggers and things like that. And there is decorative chrome, which is for cars and at one time shipbuilding and things like that. The water can get through, which is why they are triple plated, copper, nickel, chrome. But the nickel radiator, whenever it rains or it gets wet, you have to repolish it because the water actually stains the nickel. Because decorative chrome didn't come in until the late 1920s, the very late 1920s, this car actually has a combination of two. And the mascot here, the elephant, was a trademark of Rembrandt Bugatti, Ettore's son, who actually tragically died very young before this car was actually converted to this body. But this is a Rembrandt Bugatti elephant, which was a trademark of the Bugatti family. This very familiar horseshoe shape, friction dampers, which were all the rage in the 1920s and 30s. Lots of cars used them. The Bentleys used them, etc. I can't touch this car. I do know who owns this car, and I haven't had time to ask them if I can touch it, so I'm not going to touch it. The car is here just for a few days only. I couldn't resist making a video about it while I was here. I first saw this car in the Mulhouse Museum, the French National Museum of the Automobile, some years ago. Again, the story of how this car actually arrived there, a story in itself. There were two brothers called Schlumpf who lived in Mulhouse. They had a factory above ground. The Schlumpf brothers collected secretly. They used all the proceeds from the business. They bled their manufacturing business dry to support their passion of Bugattis in particular. And what they did was they built a secret underground room, massive, under the factory, and actually bought these Bugattis secretly and stored them in the underground room without anybody knowing. And one day, because the business was in jeopardy because of their spending, the workers revolted against the Bugatti brothers and they broke in to the underground car park and discovered their collection of cars. And this was one of them. It's 3 tons, this car. It weighs 3 tons, and it was one of the fastest, as I say, one of the fastest cars in the world when it was built. You don't imagine this barreling along the autoroute or whatever at very high speed, but that's exactly what it did. 3 tons, it's over 6 meters long, over 21 feet long. I give you the Bugatti Type 41 Royale Coupe Napoleon. Well, thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe. It is very important. And we'll be back with something else very soon.